Today, we're going to dive into one of the oldest and, frankly, most challenging stories ever told, the Book of Job. But what you might not know is that this isn't just one story about one man. It's actually a profound argument that has a kind of secret twin, a parallel story that, when you see it, reveals just how radical and revolutionary Job really was.
You see, at the very heart of this ancient book is a question that we still wrestle with today, maybe more than ever. Why on earth do bad things happen to good people? It's a question that just shakes our deepest beliefs about fairness, about justice, and, what's really going on in the universe. So, to explore this, our story really begins with two different men. First, over in the land of Uz, you've got Job. The book calls him perfect and upright. But living around the same time, over by the rivers of Babylon, there was this other guy, a righteous noble named Shushi-Meshre-Shakan, and he was just as devoted to his gods. Think of them as two of the best guys in the ancient world.
Now, both of these men, these pillars of their communities, are about to walk into an absolute nightmare, a trial so unthinkable it's going to strip away everything they've ever known and test their faith to the breaking point.
For the man in Babylon, it's described as the hand of the god Marduk falling heavy on him. For Job, well, the accuser gets permission to do his worst. But the result? Exactly the same. Just total, sudden disaster. Their businesses are wiped out, their children are killed, and their own bodies are covered in painful sores.
And so, sitting in the dust and ashes, from the absolute depths of despair, both of these men cry out to the heavens with the exact same agonizing question. A question that just echoes through history. Why me? Why is this happening when I see wicked people prospering all around me?
Okay, so as they're suffering, friends show up to help. And this is where the two stories really start to diverge. Their pain was the same, but the advice they get, it reveals two completely different ways of seeing the world. Let's get into this.
What's so wild is the difference in the advice. The Babylonians, friends, they see a spiritual problem that needs a kind of magical fix. Their diagnosis is basically, dude, you must have ticked off a demon or forgotten a ritual. So their solution? Go do some magic, appease the spirits. But Job's friends? They see a legal problem. They live by this rigid formula. If you're suffering, you must have sinned, period. So their solution is simple. Just confess whatever secret sin you're hiding and repent.
But here is where Job's story just completely breaks the mold. He flat out rejects their formula. He knows he's innocent. He stubbornly holds on to his integrity, refusing to just make something up and confess a sin he didn't commit just so the pain will stop. He's actually willing to challenge the whole system.
And right there, in the middle of all this brutal honesty, with all the evidence stacked against him, Job says one of the most powerful things in all of literature. He declares that he just knows that his Redeemer lives, that someone, somewhere, will ultimately stand up for him. And this brings us to the climax. Heaven finally answers both men. But the way it happens couldn't be more different. You see, one of them gets a cure. The other gets a confrontation.
And this just lays the difference bare, doesn't it? The Babylonian noble gets exactly what his friends suggested. A priest shows up, does a ritual, and poof, he's healed, so he can go back to praising the god Marduk. It's a clean, transactional fix. But Job? He gets no cure. Instead, God himself shows up and speaks to him from a whirlwind, offering not answers, but a staggering vision of reality.
And the voice from the whirlwind, it doesn't whisper comforting words. It roars a challenge. It basically says, all right, Job, stand up. You want answers? Let's talk. God never actually answers Job's why question. Instead, he fires back with a whole series of unanswerable questions of his own. He paints this picture of a cosmos that is so vast, so wild, so complex, filled with chaotic monsters like Leviathan, a universe that clearly does not revolve around simple human ideas of fairness.
And Job's response is just everything. He repents, yes, but not for some secret sin his friends were convinced he had. He repents for his arrogance, for the presumption of thinking that he, a mere human, could possibly understand the mind of God or put the Creator on trial.
So, what is the point of all this? Why tell the story in this incredibly specific way? Well, because the Book of Job wasn't just another sad story. It was a theological hand grenade thrown right into the middle of ancient wisdom. The author was taking a sledgehammer to one central idea, the retribution principle. This was pretty much the default operating system for the entire ancient world. The basic belief that, Good things happen to good people, and bad things happen to bad people. The book of Job exists to say, nope, it's not that simple.
And we know this was intentional, because Job was written against the backdrop of other ancient texts. That story of Shupshi-Meshre-Shakin, it's a perfect example. He suffers, gets his ritual fix, and never once challenges the justice of his God. Another text, the Babylonian Theodicy, is basically a transcript of Job's friends' arguments. Job is a direct response to all of that.
And here's the really brilliant part. Even though the story is set way, way back in the time of Abraham, most scholars think the book was actually written down much later, probably during the time when the Israelites were in exile in Babylon. Just think about it. Your country has been destroyed, you've been dragged from your home, and your whole religion has taught you that obedience brings blessing. The book of Job speaks right into that massive crisis of faith.
So at the end of the day, it comes down to two completely different visions of the divine. The Babylonian gods, well, they could be managed. You could appease them with magic and rituals. They fit inside a human system. But the God of Job? No way. He is sovereign, untamable, and his wisdom is so far beyond our simple formulas of reward and punishment.
The book's truly radical message is that suffering isn't always a problem you can solve with a simple equation. Sometimes it's a profound mystery, and it argues that trusting in the infinite, wild wisdom of God is actually a much safer place to be than trusting in a neat little formula that shatters the first time tragedy strikes.
This single, ancient book completely reframed one of life's hardest conversations, and it challenges its readers, both then and now, to embrace a much bigger and, more mysterious vision of God and His world.
Which leads us with a final question to think about. When you're faced with pain you can't explain, what's actually more comforting? A simple answer that you know deep down is just not true, or a vast and profound mystery that invites you to trust a wisdom that's far greater than your own?